In pretty much every professional sport, you cannot deny there is always that player the casual fan does not know. Does the average Dolphins fan know who Blake Ferguson is? Likely not. Some fans might even say, who the hell is Blake Ferguson? Just like every player, in this case driver, each one has its own unique story. Today I will tell you about one of those drivers in NASCAR, who goes by Jerry Nadeau. On September 9th, 1970, the little bundle of joy, Jerry Nadeau, was born to Gerald and Pauline Nadeau in Danbury, Connecticut. His father was a roofer, and once Jerry was old enough, he was even on the roofs of houses putting up shingles as he helped out his dad to support the family. Gerald would spend most of his time building modifieds in his basement to race at the local Danbury race arena. Jerry later recalled that his dad's push to be successful in life later motivated Jerry as it made him hungry to win. By the time Jerry was 4 and a half, Gerald got Jerry a go-kart. A couple of years later, with help from his dad, 7-year-old Jerry came in first place in the Bethany 8 to 12-year-old karting championship. By his senior year at Henry Abbott Technical School in 1998, he won his first World Karting Association Gold Cup Championship. With this, Jerry began to attract the eye of motorsports scouts. He would do an open track event at Lime Rock Park in a SCCA Toyota Celica. Even Skip Barber, the Skip Barber Racing School founder, came out to see Jerry behind the wheel that day. Jerry was later introduced to Bruce McInnes and others who gave him financial support for his racing endeavors. Jerry would move up to cars in the Skip Barber Eastern Series, where he would win 8 times and win Rookie of the Year. He would also win $100,000 in the Skip Barber Pro Series shootout. Jerry would later dip his feet into sports car racing alongside Gene Felton racing for Jill Pruitt. In 1992, Jerry would race in the 12 Hours of Sebring, but was taken out early due to a differential issue. Jerry would even race on ice in Russia in go-karts, winning a few times. Jerry would graduate to the big leagues after a couple more outings in Skip Barber in sports cars. In 1995, Jerry would make his NASCAR Busch Series debut at Richmond Raceway. Jerry would have to leave his hometown for North Carolina to be closer to his team, TNG Racing. Unfortunately, Jerry would fail to qualify for the race at Richmond and would follow this up with more poor results as he was unable to qualify for 2 more races. When he did finally make the race, he failed to finish inside the top 20. At this point, Jerry was at a crossroads. Should he stay in the United States and continue in NASCAR, or go to Europe and try to make it to F1? Shockingly, he chose to do both. He would drive for select races for MPH Racing while also running full-time in the Formula Opel Championship in Europe. He would run 2 races, finishing horribly in both and failing to qualify for a third. In Europe, he ran only 13 of the 17 races and finished an outstanding 6th overall in the standings, which was the highest of any American driver. Jerry was offered to race in Formula 3000, but turned it down to return to NASCAR. After '97, Jerry returned to the US and would be the replacement driver for Morgan Shepherd for 5 races at Precision Products Racing and the number 1 Pontiac Grand Prix. In the first few races, funny enough, Jerry was a spotter for Morgan. In addition to this, just like his dad Gerald, Jerry would build his cars for a few Busch Series races. While driving for PPR, Jerry finally managed to qualify for all the races, in addition to a tremendous 9th place qualifying run at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Later in the year, Jerry would run 2 ARCA Series races and finish in the top 5 in both of them. After these successes, Jerry would attract the attention of the 1988 Cup Series champion Bill Elliott and Dan Marino. Jerry would make his Cup Series debut in 1998 in his number 13 Ford for Elliott Marino Racing. At EMR, he would race 16 races, finishing poorly in all of them, and missing 1 race due to food poisoning. He was promptly released from the team and was signed with Melling Racing to drive the number 9 car after Lake Speed retired in the Cartoon Network car. Jerry was consistently mediocre at the end of the 1998 season, but finished with 2 top 20 finishes, including a 15th at Watkins Glen. Melling and Jerry would carry this momentum into the 1999 season, starting with an 11th place finish at Daytona. Unfortunately, inconsistency continued to plague Jerry. However, he got his first career top 10 at Talladega and his first top 5 at Watkins Glen. It was announced that Jerry would leave Melling Racing and make his way over to MB2 Motorsports, where he would substitute for Ernie Irvin to drive the number 36 Pontiac. On a disappointing note, Jerry would round out the 1999 season but would make up for this with his first ever NASCAR win in an ARCA West Series race at Las Vegas. Little did Jerry know that this is where his career would take off. For 2000, Jerry would drive for Rick Hendrick in the number 25 car. Once again, the 2000 season started with disappointment with many DNFs. However, NASCAR rolled into Charlotte for the Coca-Cola 600, NASCAR's longest race, hoping for a different result. Jerry had finished 4th in the Winston, which was the name of the All-Star race back then. For the 600, Jerry would drive the ever-living hell out of his car that day. Jerry took the lead early from Dale Earnhardt Jr. and would drive off into the distance. His team began to question if the race would end early due to the looming threat of rain. As night fell, there was still no rain. Jerry's car became very loose, and he brushed a wall once. The rain did finally come at the worst time. The team would make some adjustments, but discovered the worst, an issue with the engine's valve spring, meaning it would have reduced horsepower. Once the race got back underway, Jerry's car began to sputter as the engine was waning. The engine had gone, reducing him to a 38th place finish. Jerry and many fans alike would be heartbroken. He had led 115 laps up to that point, which was the most in his career. However, Jerry's 2000 season would live to see another day. Another severe shortcoming at Infineon resulted in an 8th place finish, followed by 2 top 5s at New Hampshire and the Brickyard. Jerry would garner another top 10 finish at Richmond. More top 15s and disappointing finishes would come as Jerry was now the laughingstock of the NASCAR Cup Series, as he compiled an astounding 9 DNFs on the season. As the Winston Cup Series rolled into Hampton, Georgia, Jerry would be starting on the front row. He would start beside Jeff Gordon for the Napa 500 at Atlanta after an impressive qualifying run of a 28.6 lap time. As the green flag waved, the leaders hurled off into turn 1. Jerry would sit back for a while, building temperature in his tires. As lap 5 clicked off the board, Jerry pushed forward and took the lead from veteran Jeff Gordon. A couple of cautions would fly due to Jeff Bodine's engine expiring, followed by Elliott Sadler of the exact same nature. Jerry would sit back some more in the top 5 for a while after these cautions. After a lap 40 competition caution, Ward Burton would take the lead from Jeremy Mayfield, which would later swap back to Burton. It seemed that Burton and Mayfield would be the class of the field early on in this race, and they might even be the ones to beat. However, the day turned upside down. Like Sadler and Bodine, Mayfield's engine would expire. Could this be the day for Jerry? As Mayfield put off the track, Jerry inherited the lead. However, Scott Wimmer would catch Jerry and snatch the lead from him. Dale Earnhardt Incorporated's Steve Park would then do the same, taking the lead in lap 64. As lap 69 rolled around, Michael Waltrip would be involved in an accident, resulting in a caution. The green flag would fly for the restart, and Steve Park would lead briefly before his boss, Dale Earnhardt, and his black Goodwrench Chevrolet would take the lead. However, the GOAT himself would not lead for long. On lap 94, Jerry would save his tires and display great long-run speed as he hounded Earnhardt and passed him quickly on bare tires. Another caution would fly on lap 111 for a crash involving Tony Stewart. A series of cautions and a lack of green flag running would propel Bobby Labonte, the 2000 champion, to the lead many laps later. Jerry would quickly take the lead from Labonte. After swapping the lead with multiple different drivers for the latter half of the race, it all came down to one restart between Ward Burton and Jerry Nadeau. On lap 319, Jerry would take the lead from Ward Burton with nothing but clear air ahead of him.
One more time, buddy. One more lap to go in the 2000 NASCAR Winston Cup season. The interval is 1.2 seconds between Nadeau and Dale Earnhardt.
Back it down and coast through this corner.
Back in March of '81, Darrell Waltrip took the checkered flag to win the very first race that we televised on ESPN. And in November of 2000, Jerry Nadeau wins the final race on ESPN.
At last, he had done it. Jerry Nadeau was now a NASCAR Winston Cup Series winner. He led a great 155 laps and became the first ever driver from Connecticut to win in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. Despite ending on an excellent note, Jerry's season was awful. He finished 20th in the final standings. Many thought he would carry this momentum into next season with this win, and there would be greener pastures ahead of him. Long story short, 2001 was more of the same. However, he would finish 17th in the final standings, but with 8 DNFs. A quarter of the way through the 2002 season, Jerry was out of a ride once again, with Joe Nemechek taking his seat. As 2003 rolled around, Jerry would sign with MB2 Motorsports to drive the 0-1 Pontiac Grand Prix. There were some bad finishes to start the season, but an eye-catching 4th at Texas would create a new era of hope for Jerry's career. Could he break through once again and silence the doubters? After a 14th place finish at California, the Cup Series rolled into Richmond International Speedway for the Pontiac Excitement 400. The weekend was very typical. Good weather in the early parts of the week had allowed rubber to build up, giving crew chief Ryan Pemberton an excellent opportunity to provide Jerry with a competitive setup. The team rolled the car out of the garage for a practice session. Jerry went out for a couple of laps and racked up one of the fastest times of the weekend so far. Jerry would be doing a practice race run when suddenly eyes turned to turn 1 as the slowing car got in his way, forcing Jerry to take evasive action. Jerry swerved out of the way, causing him to lose control, spun 180 degrees, and slammed into the outside wall on the driver's side at high speed.
Hi, I'm Chris Myers, and thanks for being with us at Richmond International Raceway for the first nighttime Winston Cup race of the season as we get set to go racing. Fans and drivers' thoughts are with Jerry Nadeau tonight. He's in critical condition. He's being treated for head, lung, and rib injuries at Medical College of Virginia. His vital signs are good, and according to doctors, those vital signs are improving, and they're quite encouraged. Nadeau is under sedation. He's not speaking. However, his eyes are open, and he is aware according to Nadeau's team manager, Jay Fry, who was with Nadeau at the hospital this afternoon. Now, it was just over 24 hours ago that Nadeau, driving the 01 car, crashed a practice session. The 32-year-old driver from Danbury, Connecticut, in his sixth Winston Cup season, hit the wall at a high speed. Rescue workers had to cut him out of the car. An advanced life team used his cervical collar and assisted his breathing. He was taken away on a stretcher and airlifted to a hospital. Here's NASCAR Vice President of Corporate Communications.
To the surprise of all viewers and spectators of NASCAR, Jerry was airlifted to the hospital. NASCAR crash scientists analyzed the impact, where it was discovered that there were two 120G impacts in the span of 1 millisecond, as the front and rear end of the car hit the wall almost simultaneously. But why? Why would a driver nearly die from head injuries so soon after the death of Dale Earnhardt sent shockwaves through the sport? Why? Contrary to popular belief, the vast safety measures we see in NASCAR today were not implemented in the hours following Dale Sr.'s death. In fact, it took years. Safety barriers, the crash-absorbing foam you see at every NASCAR track today, were not even fully implemented at hardly any tracks. For a track to install safety barriers, it would cost millions upon millions of dollars. The only track to have done it so far was Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which rakes in millions from the action it sees there every week. Unfortunately, it would not be until 2006 that you would start to see most tracks having safety barriers. As for inside the car, driver protection was not as stagnant. The closed-face helmet and the head and neck support device were mandatory for all drivers. However, this unfortunately did not stop drivers from taking their leisures with safety to support their comfort level in the car. During this particular weekend, Jerry had decided to remove the protective padding on the left side of his seat rest, deciding that he liked to turn his head in the corners, giving him a wider field of view and allowing him to have a better feel in the tight corners at Richmond. Turning your head or moving your eyes is not an uncommon practice in racing. If you happen to watch Formula One, you will notice that drivers will turn their heads and move their eyes towards the apex of the corner upon entry into the corner. They do this to maximize their concentration on the corner's exit, hopefully steering their eyes on the exit of the corner soon after to gain time. You will also see drivers do this in NASCAR, but the headrest on each side of your helmet prevents you from doing it optimally. Unfortunately, this bonehead move by Jerry could not have come at a worse time. Upon impact, the left side of Jerry's now unprotected helmet slammed into the roll bar near his seat, temporarily paralyzing the right side of his body and putting him into a coma. Luckily, shortly after impact and before falling unconscious, Jerry let his crew know something was up. The roof of his car was sliced open like a tin can, and he was lifted from his car. Doctors gave him a 6% chance of surviving. He had suffered from a skull fracture, concussion, a collapsed lung, and many broken ribs, and relied on a ventilator to breathe for months as he was in a coma from his traumatic brain injury. And just like that, Jerry Nadeau would never take another green flag in NASCAR ever again. Jerry awakened from his coma weeks later. He was distraught as to where he was. He could hardly remember anything, including his name, address, or even what he did for a living. He would also have to relearn how to walk. After realizing everything that had happened, his doctor and many friends told him it would be an excellent time to consider doing something else for a living, but he would have none of it. Like in any sport, when a devastating injury occurs, they try to mount a comeback. Jerry would test with MB2 at Concord Speedway but could not even feel the brake pedal and lost much needed stamina from his recovery program. Jerry decided it would be best that he stay away from racing. NASCAR, which many can argue was pretty negligent on safety at the time compared to today, screwed him over and gave Jerry a financial settlement for his injuries, which turned out to be only pocket change and nowhere near enough to foot his hospital bill. After selling one of his two homes, he moved to Davidson, North Carolina. Jerry's speech was also now slurred, and he suffered from an irritating numbness on the left side of his body. Today, Jerry still experiences the irritations from this traumatic injury. Additionally, it was very emotional as well as he became depressed that all he had worked for was taken away in a matter of seconds. Today, Jerry is involved in a racing school where he teaches children how to race in Lake Norman, North Carolina. In 2012, Jerry stated that he had been aware he had suffered from concussions before, but did not do anything to remedy this injury. He would suffer from repeated headaches but would take them only with a grain of salt. However, Jerry is not the only driver to have done this. A driver loved by many, Dale Earnhardt Jr., also suffered from several concussions in his career. Long story short, this would eventually catch up with him later and sideline him indefinitely. Jerry and Dale Jr. have both decided that they will donate their brains for concussion research. As for the athletes or anybody watching this video, do not take a concussion lightly, and a concussion can have very harsh effects, especially when untreated. This will do it for another video. Thank you again for all the support. Keep supporting by liking and subscribing. This is the first of many videos in my Who the Hell series, where I delve deep into the lives and careers of underrated NASCAR drivers and NASCAR bust. And with that, I want to hear from you. What do you think of the new series? Give me some suggestions below, and you never know, they might be in the following video. This has been the Wheelspin Report. Catch you next time.